And thank you. So the next speaker is Michael Megalli, who is a RISE board member and also Senior Director of Brand Strategy at Microsoft. And also, you'll notice on our website listed as part of our startup team. Because in the very beginning, when Mona Mwefi was doing a heck of a lot of work alone, Michael really picked up the pieces and ran, and I don't know how he handled the amount of work that he did in the beginning, managing our branding strategy, which turned out beautifully, and also so many other things, right down to telling me, I'll interview the volunteers if you want. So I'm really grateful to that. But also, he has such a wealth of knowledge in the area of branding and storytelling, and in helping us think about how we can strategically shed light on the positive stories, the way that we've been talking about. And so I invite Michael to come share with us more about the power of storytelling. Thank you, Michael.
And thank you. You guys are the stalwarts, so thank you for your stamina. This is an impressive showing. Where is, what am I going to do here? So yeah, Mona asked me to talk about story. I'm going to be pretty brief and go through this fairly quickly, because I think a lot of what you're going to hear in this is, you'll hear a lot of the themes that we've been hearing all day recapped, so I don't want to spend too much time on that. But this idea of story is really interesting, and if a marketing person gets up in front of a room full of people and starts talking about stories, you imagine that I'm going to talk about things like advertising or stories where someone is telling you a story. But this idea of story is much more complicated. And I think if you challenge yourself to think about your own perceptions of what a story is and how stories work in the world, we all have, I think the most interesting stories are the stories we tell ourselves. We all have this, kind of narrative. It's the way our brains work, right? You tell yourself stories about your life, about your job, about your family, about your future. And those stories can be extremely motivating. But I think, they can also be debilitating. Stories can be sort of a prison. And I think one of the things about stories is we tend to look at them as being very retroactive, right? We look back and we think about, I'm going to tell you a story about something that happened on my way here today, or I'm going to tell you a story about something that happened to me in the past. And I think that the most interesting, thing for me is the ability of stories to create a narrative that we use going forward. And I think that's really what we're trying to do with RISE. I met Mona and Wael and got involved with this group last year when I spoke at NIGMA. And my parents moved from Egypt to New York in the 60s, so had spent a lot of time in Egypt, but always wanted to figure out a way to get more involved. And I think that for people like me, for people like us, it's hard to know how to get involved other than just writing a check, or doing something like that. And I was really looking for a group that would allow me to get more involved using the things that I know how to do. And at the time, I talked about the need for creativity in business and used this example from Kenya. Ushahidi is an organization out of Nairobi that responded to the election violence in 2007 by creating an app for using SMS to track violence in Kenya, to help people to avoid the violent situation. The amazing thing about this is a group of programmers in Nairobi that created this application. The amazing thing about it is that the application has now been used in dozens of situations where it is basically the de facto crisis management application. It's been used in Japan after Fukushima. It's been used in Chicago to track violence in Chicago. It's been used in Chile to track the aftermath of the earthquake that they had a number of years ago. And so, at the time I was making the point that we don't have an idea in our heads that there's a Silicon Valley in Kenya. right? There's something, and yet here is this group of programmers who have created something new that is completely unexpected. Well, the amazing thing about this group is that they've now created a product that in a way is even more amazing. It's this product called the Brick, which is actually a piece of hardware that they call your backup supply for the internet. And it basically takes a 4G and 3G network connection, transmits it and turns it into a Wi-Fi connection. It has data backup and power backup as well. And as they say, is if it works in Africa, it'll work anywhere. And I think that that's a very motivating statement for us. And it's one of the themes, again, that we've heard. But it's pretty amazing. I mean, the world is changing much more quickly than any of us can understand, right? And there are opportunities that exist today that we can't really, I mean, I think that the main thing that entrepreneurs do, yes, they address problems, they find problems that are out there, but then they also figure out how to use the resources that they have at their disposal to solve those problems. I was at a very inspiring, this is a tribe, right? We're creating a tribe here. And I was at I was in Minnesota last week with a group of designers and technologists at the I/O Festival. I/O Festival is amazing. It's 700 people, they get together and they create, new things based on the technology that's available today. I'm not going to say too much about this because I'll get to it in a minute. Tim is terrific. I was at Entrepreneurship Week. It's amazing. I'm not going to spend time on that because we already heard about it. As I was getting ready for today, so last week, Mark Andreessen wrote an incredible piece. It's a short piece, but basically it's challenging the model of Silicon Valley. And I encourage everyone to read it. It was on Politico last week. But basically what he's saying is, we're trying to create clones of Silicon Valley, right? And you see this in Egypt, right? You have angel investors and VCs who are going in and sort of saying like, well, we're gonna create a new tool for doing whatever, and it's very much the Valley model. What we need to do is we need to figure out ways to create incentives for entrepreneurs to solve the problems that actually exist on the ground in Egypt. We don't need to clone Silicon Valley. We need to create a new mutation of Silicon Valley that is actually focused on solving the problems in Egypt. And to the excellent question that was asked before about what are the resources, I think the people of, the oil of the 21st century, but the other resource that Egypt has is a lot of problems. And the ability to solve problems in Egypt, it also has geography, right? The fact that Egypt is a connector point between Africa and the Middle East and the rest of the world, and the fact that we have a brand, I'm a brand person, so I tend to see these things, but people care about Egypt, right? When I told people back in Seattle that I was going to a thing on entrepreneurship in Egypt and social entrepreneurship in Egypt, it gets their attention, right? And so I think that you combine those things together and you can get to a new model. The other thing that's happening, and while you'll forgive the plug for the Windows Phone, I figure we've had the other products talked about, but the thing that's happening now is that all of these the technologies that are out there, right? These are recipes. These are ingredients rather in recipes that entrepreneurs can create. And that's the thing that was happening at I/O. You have all of this stuff that's out there. The technology is so modular. You can configure things in new ways. You can do things much more quickly today than you ever could before. And I think one of the challenges is to figure out, to the point about people not have, the naives, the uneducated who have entrepreneurial ideas and entrepreneurial spirit, we have to figure out how to create the same kind of operating system for business. To take away, people replicate the same stuff over and over and over again. How can we start to share that out with them? And I think that's one of the things we're trying to do as an organization. So this is not a science fiction novel based on what Egypt will look like in 2034. What it is it's an organizing idea for thinking about stories of the future, right? What will Egypt look like in 2034? 2034 is not that far away. That's really right around the corner. You can, basically, when 2034 happens, a lot of the people who were up here presenting today will be my age, which, is weird. But I think that it's definitely one of, we're in this for the long haul. And you guys are now, particularly the ones who are still here, are deputized in helping us get there. And I think that there are three things that we're really going to need. We're going to need courage to change our own narratives and to change our own stories. We're going to need creativity. We're going to need to think about things a new way and get out of the prison stories that are in the past that sort of restrict thinking. And then we're going to need this community. because we're all in it together. So thank you.